Welcome to online classroom of Heritage Public School. Class 4th. The subject we are going to study today is science. And today we will be reading chapter 1 of science. Let's begin our class. Chapter 1. The name of the chapter is Life and Survival of Plants. In this chapter we will learn about terrestrial plants, aquatic plants, other type of plants, uses of plants. Here is a box. Now we have to match the following in Do You Remember? In the previous class, you might have read about herb, tree, climber and creeper. So here are some pictures. We will match the word with the picture. The first one is of tree. So we will match the word from the picture. You will do this in book as I instruct you. The next is, it's a climber. So we will match the picture, second picture with the word climber. Third one is creeper. So we will match this word creeper from the picture that is on the number 3. The last one is herb. Let's read the chapter. Students, try to read after me as I read for better reading skills. Plants are living things just like human beings and animals. Different types of plants grow in different places. They have different features in order to survive in those areas. The special features that allow a plant or animal to live in a particular place are known as adaptations. The region where a living thing lives or grows naturally is called its habitat. According to their habitat, plants can be divided into two major groups: terrestrial plants and aquatic plants. So by reading this paragraph, we may figure out that like human beings and animals, plant also lives as they are also living things. So there are various kinds of plants and they grow at different places and they are of different types. They have different features so that they can survive in those areas. For example, pine trees, they can grow on hills and they have features so that they can survive on hilly areas. So survival means in Hindi bane rehna. So we have two kinds of plants: terrestrial, that grows on land and we also call them land plants, and the second is aquatic plants, that is the plants that grow on in water. Terrestrial plants. Plants that live and grow on water are called terrestrial plants. We find different kinds of plants in different regions like mountains, forests, plains, and deserts. These places have different soils and climatic conditions. On the basis of the type of soil and climate conditions of a place, terrestrial plants can be categorized as follows. For example, plants in deserts, plants in hills, plants in marshes, and plants in plains. So what are terrestrial plants? The plants that grows on land. For example, they can grow on mountains, they can grow in forests, they can grow in plains and in deserts also. But they have different soil to grow or different climatic conditions. So there are 4 kinds of plants, terrestrial plants. Now we are going to read about them. First we will read about plants in deserts. Deserts are very hot and dry region. Very few plants grow there because deserts receive very little rain. To obtain water from the soil and to prevent water loss, desert plants have the following features. They either have very few leaves or no leaf at all. In such plants, photosynthesis is carried out by green stem itself. Next is, they have spines instead of leaves. Spines prevent the loss of water and thus what plants retain water. They have thick and fleshy stems that they can store water. They have long roots that go deep into the ground to absorb water. So the first is that we have in terrestrial plants are plants that grow in deserts. So students, here we also live in Thar desert, that is Rajasthan. Rajasthan is a desert, and as we live here we know that it is very hot and dry and very few plants grow here. So in desert areas, the plants that grow, they know how to obtain water from soil or to prevent water loss. They have this kind of features. So let's see what kind of features they have. The first feature is that they have leaves or sometimes they don't have any leaves. So in such plants, photosynthesis, the process of making food, it is carried out by green stem. So in desert areas, the plants that may have leaves or they may not have leaves, but photosynthesis is carried out by their green stem. Second is they have spines instead of leaves, and spines also prevent them from loss of water and they can also help them to retain water, to store water. They have thick and fleshy stems that can store water. They have long roots that go deep into the ground to absorb water. So here you can see that there is a cactus plant that grows in desert area. And you can also see there are spines, the hard pointed defensive protection or structure like needles or some plants and animals. So they have these kind of spines. Let's read further. Some common plants found in deserts are cactus, prickly pear, date palm, etc. Now let's read plants in hills. Plants that grow in hilly areas and mountains adapt themselves to survive in cold conditions. As I told you earlier about pine trees, the trees we use on Christmas. So they have needle-like leaves with waxy coating. They have sloping branches through which the snow slides off easily. These trees have cone instead of flowers. Trees such as pine, cedar, fir, etc. grow in hilly areas. So by reading this paragraph, we can understand that the plants that grow in hilly areas or in mountain areas, they adapt themselves. They adopt the climatic conditions there, and they know how to save themselves from cold. So they have needle-like leaves and they have slopy branches through which snow slides off easily. And they are cone-shaped trees. So trees like pine, cedar, fir grow in hilly areas. Plants in marshes. Marshy places have sticky and clayey soil and plenty of water. Such areas are also called swamps. The roots of plants growing in marshes are unable to get air. Therefore, the root of these plants come out of water and soil to breathe. Such roots are called breathing roots, and plants are known as mangroves. Mangroves, especially the Sundarban mangroves, are example of such plants. So here, marshes means daldal in Hindi. So these areas are very sticky and the soil is very clayey and plenty of water is there in the soil. So as you may have seen marshy areas, that is daldali area, in which you can see there is a lot of water and the soil is very clayey. So the root of the plant grow in marshes, they are unable to get any air. Their roots cannot get air easily. So the roots come up out of water and then it breathes. Such roots are called breathing roots. So the areas, the marshy areas and the plants they have in marshy areas, there are breathing roots of these plants. They come out of the water and soil to breathe, and these kind of plants are called mangroves plant. Mangroves especially grows in Sundarbans, and Sundarban mangroves are example of such plants. Next is plants in plains. The climate in plains is neither too hot as in deserts nor too cold as in hilly areas. Plains receive moderate rainfall. Trees in this region have thin and broad leaves so that they can capture a lot of sunlight to make their food. These trees shed their leaves during winter season. Trees such as mango, banyan, peepal, neem grow in plains. Now, the trees or plants that grow in plains, they are grown in a very moderate climate, neither too hot nor too cold, neither as deserts nor as hilly areas. And they also receive certain amount of rainfall so that they can grow. They have thin and broad leaves and they capture a lot of sunlight to make their food. These trees shed their leaves during winter season. So, what kind of trees grow in plains? For example, mango, banyan, peepal and neem. Next is aquatic plants. So, first we have read terrestrial plants, and in terrestrial plants, what we read? We read that there are 4 kinds of terrestrial plants. First, plants in deserts. Second, plants in hills. Third, plants in marshes. And fourth, plants in plains. Next is aquatic plants. Plants that live and grow in water are called aquatic plants. Aquatic plants grow in ponds, lakes, rivers, streams and oceans. There are 3 types of aquatic plants. They are floating plants, fixed plants, underwater plants. Let's read Do You Know? Phytoplanktons are some of the simplest plants found in oceans. Although they are very tiny, these plants account for maximum produce of oxygen. So how important they are? Their name is phytoplankton, and they are simplest plants found in oceans. Let's read about floating plants. Floating plants float freely in water. To float easily on water, these plants have the following adaptive features. They have small and light bodies that can float. Examples are Wolfia and duckweed. Some plants have spongy and air-filled stems. This makes them light enough to float easily. For example, water hyacinth. So here you can see an image. This is an image of floating plant. Floating plants, they can float freely in water. And what features they have? They have small and very light body. That's how they can float on water. And some plants are very spongy, like air-filled stems. So their lightness make them to float easily. So water hyacinth is an example of floating plant. Next is fixed plant. These plants have roots that are fixed to the bottom of ponds, but most of their vegetation is above water. They have long, hollow, flexible stems with broad and flat leaves that float on the surface of water. The upper surface of their leaves have a waxy coating and stomata to absorb air. Lotus and water lily are examples of such plants. So here you can see lotus. It is the example of fixed plant. As its stem, the stem of lotus is fixed to the bottom of pond, but the leaves of lotus and the flower stays on the surface of water, and it lives on the upper surface of water. And also water lily, they are such kind of plants that are fixed plants. Next is underwater plants. These plants remain completely submerged in water. They have narrow and thin leaves and flexible stem that offer little resistance to water currents. They breathe through their body surface and do not have stomata. Hydrilla and tape grass are examples of such plants. So these are underwater plants. They grow in water. They are completely submerged or engulfed in water. They are very narrow and thin, and they are very flexible, so they can offer little resistance to water currents. They breathe through their body surface, and they never have stomata. So here you can see an example of hydrilla plant as underwater plant. Let's read other types of plants. Apart from terrestrial and aquatic plants, there are some special categories of plants, namely parasitic plants and insectivorous plants. Parasitic plants. Some plants can photosynthesize only partially and cannot produce all the food it needs by itself. For example, cascata or amarbale is one such example. These appear as pale green thread-like structure which attaches to the host plant to derive food. These are called parasitic plants. Insectivorous plants. These are some plants that eat insects. Venus flytrap and pitcher plant trap insects with the help of their special designed leaves. Such insect-eating plants are called insectivorous. They derive nutrients from the insects they trap. So here is an example of pitcher plant. You can see the leaves of pitcher plant, as these are made to trap the insect, so they can eat insect as their food. And in parasitic, one plant is dependent on other plant, so that sometimes a plant can partially make the food or cannot make the food at all. And for that reason, what this parasitic plant does, it depends on other plant for the food. Now we will read uses of plants. Plants are useful for human beings in a numerous ways. We get fruit from plants. We eat fruits, vegetables, cereals, pulses and nuts, which are plant products. We eat leaves, stems, roots and even flowers of many plants and use some of them as spices. Plant fibers like cotton, jute, flax are used to make clothes, carpets and robes. Stems of bamboo plant are used to make paper, basket, huts, furniture, walking sticks, etc. Wood of trees like shisham, teak and sal is used to make furniture like doors, windows, etc. Some plants like tulsi, cinchona and neem are used to make medicines. Gum and rubber are also obtained from plants and are used to make tires and other useful things. We also make some plants paints from plant products. So here there are some key terms that you need to learn. There are terrestrial plants that grow on land, aquatic that grow in water, and insectivorous plants that eat insects. So here we have finished our reading session. Stay home, stay safe. Thanks for watching.